Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
But when we get downstairs, it wasn't the police. It was 15 armed gunmen with black ski masks pointing guns at us. And,
Oh,
and they took our passports and phones right away. And they stuffed us into three vans and they basically put us in a cage for 3 weeks.
This is Common Denominator, straight-up conversations with Moshe Popack. Relying on critical thinking and open-spirited debate, we invite you to find common ground on everyday issues and encourage you to be bold, to be optimistic, and to take action. To learn more, head to MoshePopack.com, and we'd be so grateful if you'd like, share, and subscribe to the show. Now, here's your host, Moshe Popack.
hi everyone, and welcome to Common Denominator. Today, finding common ground on how to pursue peace in a world of conflict. Rudy Rochman is a Jewish Israeli rights activist. He travels the world to bring people together and embrace their differences, even if those differences are radical and rooted in hatred. Through empathy, intellect, and courage, he strives to find what unites us, rather than what divides us. We're honored to have him on the show. Hi, Rudy. Welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you for having me.
Why is it so important for you? What is the core driver for you to be an advocate and to go around the world trying to find the commonality or trying to find the peace between people that are, I guess, not as knowledgeable as they should be regarding anti-Semitism?
For sure. First of all, I see myself more as an activist than an advocate, and I'll explain what to me that means. Being an advocate is someone who's a supporter of a cause, like you'll speak out for that cause. And an activist is mainly someone who takes actions. So let's say you like a sports team. There's a difference between a fan in the sideline cheering on a team or sharing posts and the actual player on the ground that can make actions in order to change the outcome. So I think there's many causes that I'm an advocate for, things that I support verbally, but there are certain things that I feel more as an activist, which is the cause of the Jewish people in Israel. Now, there are certain problems that I see in my life. I think everyone has different problems that they see, whether it's in the space of the environment, whether it's in space of humanitarian work, in medicine, in technology. Everyone sees different things because basically our eyes are a reflection of what our souls crave to accomplish in this vessel that we're in this lifetime that we're put in order to achieve. And there's certain problems that I currently see. I'm sure there will be more down the line as I grow older and learn more of this world. But the problems that I see are anti-Semitism, assimilation, and Jews lacking a strong sense of identity and forgetting who they are, no sense of vision or unity towards a certain direction within the land of Israel and for the collective Jewish people, conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians and the perception that the world has against us, and the tribes of Israel being displaced through the four corners of the earth, not yet reunited. So those are the 5 problems that I see, and I dedicate my life, my energy, my time to correcting those problems. And so the reason I spend so much time is because I'm really in understanding, Baruch Hashem, that we're all a part of one. The idea of Hashem to us is not one individual or one thing, it's oneness. And we are all a part of that one. And I'm trying to create a space that does the opposite of what we are so used to, which is polarization. You take an issue and you make 2 sides, and then you have those 2 sides fight against each other. When in the reality, there's truths that exist within both, and the real truth is both of them combined. And so what I'm trying to do is spend my energy to fix the problems that I see in this world.
So there's 2 things that I love. The word activist. I'm a big fan of that congruency. You can, I would love, for example, to just sit in a cave, and I tell my friends, sit in a cave for 10 years and try to find, peace, if you want to call it that. Or you can be grounded here in reality. You can take those abstract ideas and you can drive it home practically in the most effective and efficient ways with your actions. You're traveling the world and people are sometimes not on the same page as you. So tell me a story of something that you've encountered and how you've dealt with that.
For sure. How about I start with kind of what made me an activist and what
Sure.
made me see the world this way, and then I'll give you a few examples of, how later on I've been able to address it. So I was raised growing up all around the world, and I think it's a very enriching experience that I was able to see different cultures, meet different peoples, learn different languages, understand different mentalities, be exposed to so much different information. It really gave me a different worldview than someone that may have been born and raised in the same place. So I was born in France. All of my grandparents were born in different countries. On my mother's side in Morocco and Algeria, on my father's side in Poland and Belgium. All of my grandparents had been persecuted from the countries that they were living in for being Jewish, ended up fleeing to France. That's where both of my parents were born. Me being born second generation in France, we never felt that we were French, that this was our country, our identity, our history, our future, our culture, our language. It's more the place that we had unfortunately been forced to flee to after many other chapters of Jews being persecuted in other places. And so I already grew up with that kind of mentality, moved to Israel when I was 3, then to Miami when I was 5. And as you know, Miami is the least American place within America, because even if you're born in Miami, you still identify as Argentinian, Venezuelan, Cuban, Haitian, Jamaican, Puerto Rican, Dominican.
Sure.
And so I grew up in a society for a large part of my childhood in a place that no one felt this strong American identity. And you had to connect to where your parents or grandparents came from. But when I would connect to where my parents or grandparents came from, they came each from different places. And even while living in those places, we're never a part of those places, right? We weren't Polish in Poland. They weren't from Belgium in Belgium. They weren't from Morocco in Morocco. And so to me, it was very strange that I should identify just by where my last chapter of displacement happened to be. And I kind of rejected that because I realized we're actually not Moroccan, we're Jewish, and we're not Polish, we're Jewish. And we weren't Russian in Russia, we weren't Ethiopian in Ethiopia, and we weren't anything else in other places. Those were just chapters of our displacement after being really displaced from where we originate from, which is Israel.
I just want to tell you that that structure, especially in today's world, is a superpower. It's an X factor because just hearing that part of your childhood and that structure. My wife's just on that point. My wife's side from Uzbekistan, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law from Georgia. I grew up in New York, but my grandparents from Belarus. So again, Ashkenaz, Sephardi, which are two different areas. And now my kids speak Russian to try and some of them learning Spanish. So tremendous strength, and I just want to put that to the audience. It is not a negative. It is excellent, diversified. It's hard, to your point, and I want you to continue your story, but it's hard to find stability as a child because our brains are not as developed at that point. But when you grow up and you have that sensitivity to all different cultures and people. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And I would also say that I'm the first of 4 boys, and it made our family much more closer because our environment is constantly changing, but our family always stays the same and always stays together, even with the different challenges we're put in. So a lot of people will look at, moving around as something that would be bad to children. In our experience, I'm sure maybe it has been negative to others, but at least for my family, it was very positive, very enriching, and made us a lot closer.
Sure.
But the struggle still remained that whenever someone was asking me, who are you and where you're from, I was expected to give a different answer based on who was asking the question or where the question was being asked. And for that, kind of sort of developed a frustration within me. And I wanted to find the answer that I can connect with. And so the story that I'm going to share that really is the spark of the awareness of my mission and the understanding of what I should do with my life started in an experience when I was 7 years old. I took a trip to London with my mom, my younger brother. We got onto the red tour bus that does the tour of London, the double-decker bus. And as we got onto the bus driver, who ended up being a neo-Nazi, sees my mom's shirt, who had a shirt written with Hebrew on it, and sees the shirt and says, "Excuse me, is that written in Jewish?" And she says, "No, it's written in Hebrew, but it's the language of the Jewish people. That's what you're asking." And he says, "Oh, so you guys are Jews?" He's like, "Yeah, we're Jews. That's the problem." He's like, "I don't want any Jews on my bus. You have to get off." Wow. And my mom, being a very strong woman, and she also taught me how to be strong as well, said, "I don't know who you think you are. We're not getting off this bus." And he got up, grabbed my mom, and threw her off. And a lot of things happened after that. Eventually, the guy got arrested. But that moment really taught me two things. The first thing it taught me is that the next time I would have to deal with any form of anti-Semitism, xenophobia, or really injustice as a whole, I'd have to be prepared. I'd have to be prepared physically, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, and even ideologically, understanding why this is even happening in the first place and what I can do in order to prevent it on a more macro scale from them happening on the micro scale. And the second thing that it did for me is it taught me who I was, because I realized in this moment, it didn't matter where I was born, grew up, lived in, traveled to, if my dad is Ashkenazi, my mom is Sfaradi, where my grandparents were born, what I practice, what I don't practice, if I'm religious, if I'm not religious, if I believe, if I don't believe. What mattered was that I was a Jew. And so I went even deeper. I was like, okay, so if this is who I am, this transcends all the other temporary experiences, born, traveled, raised in, what piece of paper that we call a passport, then what is it really to be a Jew? And we're taught in our generation today that to be a Jew, you're a part of the Jewish religion. But if you define the word religion, it's you must believe in the belief system to be a part of it. So a Christian who doesn't believe in Jesus is not a Christian. A Muslim that doesn't believe in Muhammad is not a Muslim. A Buddhist that doesn't identify with the philosophies of Buddha is not a Buddhist. So we're not a religion because a Jew who doesn't believe in Hashem is still a Jew. And in order to become a Christian, a Muslim, or any religion, all you do is accept the belief system, and within 1 second, you are a part of that belief system. So religion is a wandering ideology that crosses over borders and nations, and that you are a part of it based on if you choose to believe it in that very moment. And this definition of spirituality, which is for religions, does not fit for the Jewish people. And I started looking at other native civilizations like Native American nations that live in America and Canada, or Mayans and Aztecs. And you have also the Aboriginal in Australia, and the Kurds and the Yazidis and the Tibetans. They all have spiritualities. They all have fundamental belief systems that are in tune with their culture and a foundation of their culture, yet no one calls them a religion because peoples aren't a religion. We're an ancient civilization with a spirituality that is fundamentally connected to us, and that's not a religion. So I realized that we were calling ourselves by what the world sees other people, and when we do that, then they don't understand. I don't get it. Christians aren't a nation. Muslims aren't a nation. Buddhists aren't a nation. It's a wandering ideology that people can tune into, believe in, or not believe in. But Judaism is not that. We're a physical people that were forced to cross those borders.
That's a very interesting difference. Yeah, I do see the difference. And then from there, I guess from that framework, I guess that was probably the spark from the activist side. I guess now you had this idea that now you're going to go and explain it to people.
That gave me the realization of who I am. It gave me the understanding that there's a problem of anti-Semitism that I have to help correct, or at the very least, at first it was, I have to be prepared for the next time. And then I realized that a lot of people weren't prepared. So it evolved from there. And then I realized that a lot of people don't know what it means to be a Jew in the first place, just like maybe I didn't, when I was before 7 years old. And then I wanted to put in work in order to change that. And so that's how it started and evolved with time.
So I know you. One of your trips that you had was to Nigeria, and traveling the world. Tell us a little bit about kind of what happened there.
So I have to start with the reason for why we were there, which is we're doing a documentary series on the stories of the disconnected communities of Jews around the world, what we've called in pop culture as the lost tribes. And they exist in the four corners of the earth, from Africa to Asia to South America to really everywhere. And we decided to start with Africa. The way this story even began was, as I was a student at Columbia University, there was a woman who came to the Chabad house, which I was working at one day, and she gave this really unique looking kippah to the rabbi as a gift. And I asked her, where did you get this from? And she's like, I just got back from Africa on my honeymoon trip. And, we brought this kippah back. I'm like, Jews in Africa, handmade looking kippah that's huge and has menorahs and something that I've never seen. And she shows me pictures on her phone of Jews practicing Judaism in Africa. And that made me realize, how come I don't know about this? Why did it take 24 years at that time of my life to discover that I have brothers and sisters in other places in the world, and that we're totally disconnected to their struggles, their aspirations, and their experiences? And we started to go into a research mode and find out about all these different communities. And we decided to embark on a journey of creating a documentary series, which is really a tool to bringing ideas to the surface and changing the consciousness of this topic for our generation. And that's why we started this project. Now, Nigeria is one of the 6 episodes. It's the Igbo people. The Igbos have a very unique narrative that is very detailed of how they descend from Shevet Gad, the tribe of Gad, G-A-D. And they have, Jewish practices that they've had for thousands of years. There's writings of the first Christian missionaries hundreds of years ago that came to Africa before colonization and before slavery, writing letters back to the church saying, we are witnessing Jewish life here, and the Igbos here are practicing Judaism. So this is clearly has been going on for hundreds and thousands of years in this land. And so we decided to go in and discover the story. Now, Nigeria is also very, very dangerous. And the Igbos particularly are the people being persecuted by the government. It's not a surprise. That's usually what happens to Jewish communities at some point in our experience in other places. And what's fascinating is that they are the most educated demographic in all of Africa, the wealthiest demographic in all of Africa, and they're not allowed to get into any sort of political position. And they're always blamed by the society for any economic or social problems. They're always, oh, you run the media. Oh, you run the economy. Oh, you're the reasons for why those are problems. They only marry between themselves. They help each other rise up. And it's almost the same story of any other Jewish experience, just that it's in Nigeria. That being said, in 1967, there was the Biafra War where 3 million Igbos were exterminated. Until this day, there's extermination of Igbos where the government literally pulls up into different Igbo communities and just shoots up civilians and people just to create fear. So we knew going to Nigeria, this was going to be a dangerous experience, especially being that we're doing a documentary on a population that the government deems to be enemies. And by association, we also become enemies. But, when Jews left America to go fight the Nazis in Europe, people risk their lives when it's for something greater. And that's the same calling that we saw, that there's our brothers and sisters suffering, and we need to go showcase their story for the world to wake up so we can actually save lives. We did a lot of research. We had security with us. We spoke to security experts. There were certain places that we couldn't go to, and we intentionally didn't go because it was too dangerous. There's Boko Haram in Nigeria. There's, a huge amount of kidnappings that happen all the time. So it's not the safest place to go to, but it's a beautiful country like many countries are in the world. And there's many great people like you have in many places in the world. It's just currently very dangerous. And we set out on our adventure. We took a flight from Tel Aviv to Turkey and Istanbul.
This is what year is this? How many?
This was less than a year ago.
Yeah. Okay.
This is in July last year.
Mm-hmm.
So we take a flight from Israel to Turkey to Lagos in Nigeria. Then we have another flight within Nigeria from Lagos to Asaba, then drive to Ogidi. So it was quite a journey to get there to our first community. And we're with these communities, and it's one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had. Meeting family members of yours that speak Hebrew, that learn Torah, that are shomer every single mitzvot, that know the Gemara and different things.
This is mind blowing to me because, I've heard that there's different iterations, but in other words, you seeing on the ground in Nigeria that the traditional, Old Testament of how we have the Old Testament, they're actually practicing that in the ground on the ground in Nigeria. That's eye opening to me. I did not realize that. That's tremendous.
Now, for context, many Igbos, I would even say most Igbos, in the past few hundred years were forcibly converted to Christianity, like the experience was for Jews in the Inquisition and in other places. But there are pockets that went underground and that kept their Judaism, which wasn't called Judaism because they didn't come from Judea. They came from the tribes of Israel before that Jews were called Jews. And so they identified as Hebrews and Israelites. In fact, Igbo comes from Ivri, from Hebrew. And that's where their name comes from because they see themselves as Hebrews. And they've always preserved many things orally. They had Nida practices when a woman is on her menstrual cycle. They have Rosh Chodesh of being able to look at the moon. They have all sorts of things, circumcisions that are clearly from Jewish origins. And a lot of things with the rise of the internet and their accessibility, they go and they study, they learn, they go very deep. So there were times when I was asking them, when are we going to go to the market? I want to see a little bit of the life here in Nigeria. And the the way you asked the question reminds me of when Moshe and Bamidbar was taught, like the connections that they're making of like Torah verses for everything that you're talking about in life shows that these are people that live Torah. It's not just they learn on the side; they live it in every day. And it was a very, very spiritual, deep, beautiful, one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. You can sense it right away. I mean, every moment it was like we had tears in our eyes from the beauty of what we were experiencing. Now, on our second day there, we finish one of the main days of interviews for the first community.
So you're staying. So you're staying in the camp with the people, shooting the documentary, and this is now. Just want to come in the picture. So now this is the second day while you're on the ground. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah.
So it's the second day while we're on the ground. We've filmed, 2 days worth of footage. That second day was scheduled for a lot of interviews, going deep in conversation, in sit downs with people to add that narration part of the documentary. And we were staying at about a hotel, 10 minutes away. And this is really a remote place. So, it's not the hotels that you would imagine coming, when you travel. And so we're ending our second day of filming, and our fixer, who's like kind of the guide and the person that can translate and take care of where to go and everything else that's on the ground, tells us, guys, there's a lot of turmoil happening on social media, and they're talking about you as if you guys are 3 Mossad agents have come into Nigeria to topple the government and go against the regime. And we're like, what are you talking about? We're Jewish rights activists coming to tell a story of other Jewish communities. We have nothing to do with the politics or with the government. And we decide, anyone who looks us up, I also have hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. We have a website up, we have a pitch deck. Like, it's very detailed what our plan is there, and people know who we are. So it's not like you can kind of just make up a story and that would go over what the already story about us is. And so we decided to just make a post saying, we're not here for any political reason or for any diplomatic mission. We don't represent any organization or government. We are here purely to tell the story of the Igbos that are practicing Judaism, where they come from, and what have they been, and where they plan to go to. We go to sleep thinking that this should be enough. And in the morning is where things start to happen. We wake up at 7 in the morning. The plan was to leave at 7:45 to go back to the community. But at 7:30, we get a phone call from the hotel saying, come downstairs with your passports and phones. The police are here. Now, when we heard police, we are okay. We passports, we'll give it to them quickly. Nothing's going to happen. We haven't done anything illegal. We'll show them that we're good people. But when we get downstairs, it wasn't the police. It was 15 armed gunmen with black ski masks pointing guns at us. And, and they took our passports and phones right away. And they stuffed us into 3 vans, and they basically put us in a cage for 3 weeks. And it was a very tough experience. There was no trial, there was no phone call, there was no lawyer, there was no rights at all, there was no accusation, there was no process. We're not in the books anywhere. It was straight up coming at gunpoint, kidnapping us, stuffing us in a van, driving us hours, maybe 12 hours away, and then holding us in a small cage for the first week without food, no food for 1 week.
Wow.
And then the second week, they transferred us to another cage with 2 Boko Haram terrorists. And for those who don't know what Boko Haram is, it's the ISIS wing in Nigeria. And so we're with 2 terrorists, one of which killed 70 people in a terror attack. And we're fighting to survive in every single way. And
did everyone in the group survive?
Yeah, we were 3 taken. One of the 3 was released after the first week because he had a medical condition and he had to go to the hospital. And then the French embassy was able to extract him. So he was kept at the embassy from that moment on. If he left the embassy, they would take him back. And then it was me and Noam, who's the director, filmmaker. And then they transferred us to another cage with 2.
And you're an American citizen, right?
I have US citizenship, French citizenship, and Israeli citizenship.
Did anybody try to reach out to the American embassy?
Yes. At first, you have to understand that just because you are American, French, Israeli, whatever else, it doesn't mean you're innocent, right? If you do a crime in a country, you're going to have to sit for whatever you did. The difference with us is we did no crime. We did no harm. We did nothing illegally. We had permits to come. We had film permits as well. Nigeria is actually a very big, booming film industry. They say it's like the 3rd in the world after America and India. And so, when we got to Nigeria, we had no issues at all, but all of a sudden everything started raining down. And my family and other individuals that got involved did reach out to people in very high positions in the US government and other governments, and eventually put enough political pressure to get us released after 3 weeks.
So you got released and came back to America at that point?
Got
Or
released, sort of even deported, not officially, but the guards followed us until we got to the plane. Like imagine, we've all taken flights. Yeah, you go through security, you go through the terminal. So just imagine a bunch of soldiers around you, like holding all of your belongings. You can't touch anything, not your phone, and taking you to the flight. And only on the flight they give you everything else. And everyone's looking at us as if we're some sort of criminals. And we took a flight from there and back to Israel.
and
And
while I just want to go back to that experience in the cage. I mean, I just picturing that. What was going on in your mind during those almost 3 weeks?
At no point did we think of the possibility that our chapter of life would end here in Nigeria. And I think that's very important for anyone that gets into life and death situations, especially those that are not just, a few minutes, but end up being days, if not weeks, if not longer, is not to let yourself at any point give in to fear or even have fear, and not to give up and not to imagine that you're going to end. Like we had a mindset, we're making it out of here. We have to consider all worst case scenario possibilities, but we are making it out of here. We know that for a fact. Like that's how we saw things.
So I'll tell you something. I find that, if you look back, each person that looks back at their life, and they just have to say to themselves, and I've seen this, as long as you have a mission, a life mission, and you've paid many prices in your life, and something beyond the nature of the world will keep you alive. And I've spoken to many people about that, and I love that you kept the right mindset, because that's super important. Now I want to go to how in these terrible environments, or even these conversations of people that are attacking you, like when you were in Denmark, how do you stay composed? What's the self-talk? What's happening in your mind that keeps you composed, trying to get to that peaceful place, or the place of understanding?
So what you brought up with this idea of oneness is something that I think a lot of people are lacking today. And I think if more people maybe were able to view this information, that would give them more of a fulfillment or answers in their life. The way I see Judaism is that it's a way of life that isn't monotheistic, it's panentheistic. And there's a difference, because let's say someone who's polytheistic, meaning believing in many gods, you get rid of the 3 idols that you have. Let's say you had a total of 4, you get rid of the 3 and you only keep 1. That's monotheism. Monotheism is believing in one idol, in one thing, that this individual thing is divine. But in Judaism, we don't believe that God is one thing, that there's one idol. We believe that God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Echad means God is one, not only that there is one God. And so it's this idea that we're all a part of oneness, this one infinite, this divine that starts from the atoms to the cells, to the organs, to the body, to the family, to the species, to the ecosystem, to the planets, to the solar system, to the it's infinite in both ways. And it's crazy, this one thing that we're a part of that is infinite, that has no beginning and no end. And it's way too complex for our mortal minds to even really comprehend. This is the oneness that we're a part of, and that I see as what God is, what Hashem is, and that's panentheism, not to be confused with pantheism. And so I see that as this is the oneness that we're a part of. So anyone that I'm engaged is a part of this one. Any animal, even like when we're walking down, I won't litter, because this is the world that I'm a part of. So it's a different kind of mindset.
And I want to share with you, that is a deeply held belief of mine. And why? Because I heard that concept. My grandfather was on, the last time I saw him, he was 93 years old on his deathbed. And he said to me a concept of, why should it be that I shouldn't be able to move your arm? Or in other words, he's like, here's a person, his mind is sharp, his body's shutting down. And he basically told me, there's no ulterior motive. So why am I not believing him? He told me with all sincerity, he said, everything is one. It's all just agents and agents and agents of God. And again, I don't want to speak, because that's the first thing. I don't want to speak about organized religion. I think that's what we're missing And that creates the gratitude, the empathy. That if you have the right framework of anything that the fact that we exist, just the mere fact that we exist, should not be. So live every moment in that gratitude. And I know you exude it, and I know you follow that congruently with your actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It would make things a lot easier if we all understood that. In terms of engaging with people, first of all, a lot of these viral videos that I've made, a lot of people don't realize that I did not know what the person was going to say before they said it. They kind of see the video properly edited, made, and, they'll comment like, why were you like, waste your time with that person? Or how did you know what this? I don't. Like, I'm meeting these people for the first time. I don't know if they're pro-Jews, anti-Jews, pro-Israel, I have no idea about who they are. And everything is fresh. Whatever they say is what I have to address right away. So whenever I'm engaging with someone, I've realized that it's not about proving me right and them wrong. First of all, I'm always open-minded. I might learn a lot of things from them as well. Even if it's wrong information, I might learn new wrong information that is being taught and how I can communicate in a way that corrects it. But I'm not trying to prove them wrong. I'm trying to, through their own worldview, give them a better way of how to be right. Meaning, I understand that they have a certain objective, values, something that they care about, and that they see the world through a certain lens. So let's say it's someone who's Muslim, they see the world through an Islamic lens. Someone who's an atheist see the world through that kind of worldview. And I'm trying to speak through their worldview in that language, not actually the words, but the way you use your words, in order to include my truth within their worldview and to show them that I'm actually not against them. And supporting the same ideas that I support doesn't go against their worldview, but actually moves that worldview forward. And so I think that's a very powerful tool of how to be able to communicate. And that can be used in all situations, not just political tense conversations, but when you're speaking to a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a spouse, a child, a coworker, you need to understand that person's worldview, their traumas, what they already see to be true and believe to be true, so you can make parallels with those things for them to get to the conclusion and understand that much easier. It's a whole way of communication that helps you actually get the person to understand what you're trying to say, not just regurgitate information.
I find a saying about truth, sometimes the truth is too painful. So people would rather survive than go through the pain of the truth. So the only thing that you can do is be a vessel for that pain. So if they're communicating, right? If they're communicating, you don't judge. Don't judge self, don't judge others. And I've seen some of the videos, and I think that you exude that or you're completely open or radically open to the conversation. And that way their guard, either subconscious or conscious guard, is dropped. And I think that you're correct. To brothers, sisters, parents, family, friends. And I think that if we went with that way, if each person, we taught that unspoken framework, I think we'd avoid wars, actually. I don't think there's any, throughout history, there was never any need for war. It was just people deciding to not communicate correctly, whether they know it or not know it. And it could have been avoided. I want to go to right now. Years we're dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What would you say practically, if you were the leader of Israel? What would you say practically would be a potential solution?
First of all, I think the solution is not going to come from an individual, but sort of a generational mindset shift. But any solution that will come has to focus on accomplishing the two things for both peoples. Those two things are ending the injustices that they experience, which are different for both, and fulfilling the aspirations that they have, which are different for both. And if we can make a list of, let's say, top 10 things in terms of injustice that you face, and bring those lists together, top 10 things that your people require in order to fulfill their aspirations, and create the solutions or start the process of finding the solution based on those values, that, in my opinion, is the key to shifting the whole situation. Right now, we view it as a sort of zero-sum game soccer match. One side is the side we're supporting, the good side, and the other side is the bad side. And to be pro-Palestinian, you must be anti-Israel, and to be pro-Israel, you must be anti-Palestinian. When the reality is, if you're anti-either, you're anti-both, because there's no reality where either disappear. So the reality of one is going to destroy the other or kick out the other is not going to happen. So we're left with two choices. Either we continue the status quo where people continuously suffer, or we come up with something completely different based on truly going deep and healing the problem. And that's for me, the way to move forward is to create a space that allows Israelis and Palestinians to see their future, not without the other, but side by side with the other, not in a way that goes backwards on our needs, but in a way that goes forwards on our needs.
So I think I just saw yesterday in the news, they're very close in Dubai to finishing the compound where they have a mosque, a church, and a synagogue on the same campus. And I told my wife, my 11, soon to be 12-year-old son, that's where we're going to do my son's bar mitzvah. That's where we're going to go. I think that we have to have a space, a vessel for communication, and each person by person respect each other. We don't have to fight. It's way too much fighting, right? Every day. So what? You're right. It doesn't do anything. We want to move forward as a humanity, right? So I want to say thank you for that. What are some of the projects you're working on now?
Well, I'm going to also go into you asked me one of the first questions was
Sure.
give me an experience with one of these things that you had with people who would normally be anti-Jews or Israel.
Yeah, sure.
The other day I was here in Miami. I just got here a few days ago and I'm leaving tomorrow. I was at a coffee shop doing some work, editing a video that I have coming out actually with another anti-Semite in a European country. So that's going to be a very strong video, but I'm editing the video and I'm packing up because I got to go. I ordered an Uber outside and there's a guy who stops me. He's like, "Hey, aren't you that guy that does all those videos, Rudy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. How are you?" And he's like, "I'm good. I actually love what you do. You create a space that allows Israelis and Palestinians to see their own truth within a narrative that allows them to come together, that's non-antagonizing, that's sobering even, and I'm very thankful for those things." And I'm like, "Oh, where are you from?" He's like, "My family's from Bethlehem. I'm Palestinian." And the moment he said that, my face lit up and I smiled, gave him a big hug.
I just got chills, by the way.
Yeah. And he too, he knew that would be the reaction. And he also felt that way close to me as someone from the land who's connected from the land. And to be honest, most of my experiences with Palestinians in the land or out have been like that. Now, of course, there are some that are raised thinking that the reason that they suffer is because Israel exists and will say horrible things. But even those, I have videos where, "Oh, you're a terrorist, you're a monster, you're a baby killer," all these things that obviously I'm not. And then after maybe 20 minutes of getting all that anger out and releasing all that pain and trauma, then we're able to have an open conversation. And then it ends with, "You're my brother, I love you, we need to come together." So even the people that may sound very hateful to the point that you're bringing up earlier, they may have never met a Jew in their life. So their opinions are not even really based on who we even are. Their opinions are based on traumas that they've had and the conclusions that they've come to because of the misinformation or disinformation that someone has led them on the path. And whenever I'm approaching an individual, I'm realizing this could be the person's first time meeting a Jew. This could be the person's last time meeting a Jew. And in this moment right here, it's not an opportunity to feel like I won and to make this a battle of my ego and emotions. This is a blessing that I'm here in this moment in order to correct, in order to heal, in order to give them a different perspective and a different experience with a Jew. And thank you for putting me in this situation, because if I wasn't, who knows what it could have happened without that. And so that's really how I'm focusing on. In terms of projects, we have several things in the works right now. The main one is the We Were Never Lost project, which is the documentary series. Since our experience in Nigeria, we've been back to Africa twice, to Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and we still have a few other countries to go, which we should be going to in July. And then we're going into post-production, which will take a few months, and hopefully that'll be ready by then. I suggest everyone to check out also Habayit, which is a movement that I'm a part of in Israel that unites Israelis and Palestinians. It's a movement of Israelis and Palestinians to really create a different narrative and to change the perspectives and the viewpoints of the culture on both sides. And there's a lot of video works that I have a lot going on in terms of fighting anti-Semitism and changing the narrative for the Jewish people.
So Rudy, I just want to wish you tremendous luck. I think what you're doing is tremendous. It inspires me. Hopefully it inspires the audience. Each person we create leaders and empower people to have courage to do what's important in this world. How can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is a true leader creates more leaders, not more followers.
Sure.
So I definitely think that and hope that everyone that listens to this podcast and others where you hear from someone that's doing something in this world, that doesn't mean you have to do exactly what they're doing, but maybe you can take that as an inspiration to find what you are brought into this world to do and what fulfills you and how you can change the world, because one person can change the world and people don't realize that. So
Yes.
definitely hope that a lot of people, take things from each of the podcasts and use that to help them advance and to grow into what they're meant to do. You guys can look me up on Instagram, Rudy_Israel. On Facebook, just type in Rudy Rochman, Rochman, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, all the social media platforms.
Thank you so much, Rudy. It's really been great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Common Denominator podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring, impactful, and empowering conversation. To learn more about Moshe, head to MoshePopack.com. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it. And we'd be grateful if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the show.